Thank you for joining us, and welcome again to another installment of Cerdant Bytes. So today is an extra special episode for me because I get to talk to one of my favorite people and someone that I've known probably longer than just about anybody, and we've worked together for a very long time now. We have with us today Joshua Skeens, the CTO of Cerdant, and very, very long time Cerdant employee. Thanks for joining me, Josh.
Thanks, Cara. Appreciate the introduction. And yes, I have been at Cerdant for a very long time.
Yeah, we joke that you have held just about every job there is to have held at Cerdant, including refrigerator repairman.
Yes, and don't forget, I know how to fix a Keurig coffee machine as well.
Yes, the Keurig is not to be forgotten.
Yeah.
So obviously, your time at Cerdant is incredibly valuable as it relates to, a lot of topics in both technology and security, but really especially SonicWall. So we're here today to talk about, really specifically about the SonicWall Mid-Year Threat report, because your insight on that report is, paramount to a lot of our customer conversations and really informs a lot of the security decisions that our customers make. But really, you just in general, since your first days at Cerdant, have worked with SonicWall products, and that's been for what, 17 years now?
Yeah, 17 going on 18. So 18 will be in July, but seen many flavors of SonicWall. Started working on the original Soho back in 2003, 2004. Previously, even before being at Cerdant, I had worked at a company that had SonicWall as well, and I became familiar with them there too, back in the Pro series. But just to see the growth from a SonicWall perspective, their legacy firewall business, but there's so much more than that now. Back in 2004, 2005, firewalls were really just opening ports, and they maybe had a VPN on there and could do just a few routes. That was about it. And to see where they're at now from a technology perspective with RTDMI, deep packet inspection, all of the security services that they have, the sandbox capabilities, it's just amazing to see where they've come and really enjoy the technology and what SonicWall is doing with it.
Yeah, it really is amazing, from shifting to all firewalls doing really just about the same thing. And like you mentioned, the advent of deep packet inspection and then SonicWall's proprietary RTDMI technology really, really clearly differentiated the security companies from the routing companies. And I think that's, a testament to the reason that Cerdant is stuck with SonicWall as a major supporter over all of these years.
I would agree. A lot of times people believe that SonicWall is more for SMB business, but I can tell you that we have a lot of their boxes in large enterprises, universities as well, campus deployments. The technology holds up. The security is second to none. The total cost of ownership is right up there as one or two as well. So it's definitely a great product and great company.
Awesome. Well, we're not, I went a little off topic there. It sounded like, the SonicWall homers a bit, but at the end of the day, we are big supporters, and a big part of the relationship and the partnership for us are also not just the technology, but the tools that they provide to us as partners, as well as the end customers, that really help us inform our security practices, as well as help our customers inform their security decisions, like I mentioned, and their annual and semi-annual threat reports are a big piece of that. So, we usually talk about the threat report at various points throughout the year, analyze the data, talk about what it really means to the businesses. And as we wrap up 2022, there's really no better time to go ahead and do it again. So that's what I'd really like to dig into with you. So this is really some of the mid-year threat report data that we're going to talk about. So with the next annual threat report coming out in early 2022, I want to talk about some of the mid-year data and talk about what we've seen in the second half, what it's meant to us, and maybe throw in a little prediction, or a few predictions.
Sure, let's do it.
Well, so hopefully people aren't too sick of hearing about ransomware at this point, because it is certainly the belle of the security ball from a topic perspective here in 2021, but it continues to be for good reasons. And there's a quote on one of the pages in the mid-year threat report that really sticks out to me. And it's, even if we don't record a single new ransomware attempt in the entire second half of 2021, 2021 will already go down as the worst year for ransomware SonicWall has ever recorded. Like, what, where does your brain go when you hear a statement like that?
Yeah, it's crazy to think, right? That, back when this was published, there was 4-5 months probably still left in the year, and we'd already surpassed what we had done the previous year. And to me, it's just a stark reminder that this is big business now, right? It's not just people in their basement or groups of kids or teenagers trying to have fun and be malicious. Like, this is really big business. There's large hacking organizations that are doing this to make lots of money. And I mean, lots of money. Businesses, they get ransomware, they continue to show a willingness to pay the ransom, which then just causes more people to try to hack those businesses again. And what you even see a lot of times is that businesses that pay a ransom then are typically attacked again later on, whether it's a year or 2 years down the road, because they know that business is willing to pay. So we just know that this is going to continue to be around. There is no quick fix for this. And there's a lot of security posture that needs to go in place, but we need to continue to be diligent. I would urge businesses not to pay. I mean, there's always some situations, there's a gray area there, right? But if we continue to pay, then people are going to continue to ransom businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that hold true in a few unfortunate, specific situations. And you brought up the willingness to pay. I think another big topic tied to ransomware has also been the topic of cyber insurance, which has served as, a nice fallback solution for some businesses who have been hit, but it also is kind of putting a target on them in certain places. Would you agree?
I would agree with that. It used to be pretty easy to get cyber insurance. And I'm not saying it's difficult today, but it was pretty cheap. You could just fill out some paperwork, say, yes, I did these things, and they would give you, insurance. And it's not technically insurance in a lot of situations. A lot of times it's more like breach protection, ransom protection, things like that. But, for the conversation, we'll say that it's insurance. But now what's happened is so many of these insurance companies have had to pay out that they're really tightening the reins on what they will allow from a business perspective. And they want people to show that they have a good security posture in play. They have a next generation firewall. They have an EDR and MDR in play. Possibly they have a SIM in place or a SOC as a service. They have MFA turned on. They're doing all the proper things that we continue to preach about. And they're making sure that businesses have these before they will give them insurance. And if they don't, they might deny them, or what's going to happen is they're going to pay a much higher rate for their insurance at that time.
Yeah, I think that, like, we've seen that even with the time of year that it is, our customers often reach out to us to help fill out questionnaires for their annual insurance policies and help validate that all of the things that they are required to have in place for claims to be valid and to provide coverage are actually in place. So it's, based on what we've seen in those applications, we can certainly attest to that requirements are certainly getting more strict. And it really just, it's still on the ransomware front, and it amazes me how ransomware actors are still shifting to find various ways to make people pay. I mean, the extortion piece is one of them. Like, have you seen any specific instances when extortion is in play, or what are your thoughts on those additional tactics that they're using that aren't just, we have your data for ransom?
Yeah, so previously, I mean, a lot of times that's what they were doing. They were just taking the data, they were encrypting it, hoping that people would pay. And at the beginning, a lot of people did pay, right? They were scared, they were worried they might not have had good backups, so they wanted to get that data back. But then people stopped paying. So they turned to a different mechanism, and that was extortion. So now what they're doing is they're actually taking the data so they can have it to disperse to people, which could be Cara, your information, my information. It could be healthcare information, credit card, whatever that might be. mean, worse, it might be intellectual property for some large manufacturing company that they're going to sell off, and now somebody overseas is going to go manufacture the same product or maybe even a car. So what they're doing is they're leveraging this data or the threat of leaking this data to the public or for sale to get these people to pay the ransom, and it's working. So that's just another avenue that people have to worry about. And to me, it's just another reminder of that businesses need to be doing the right things all the time. And, you know, I always say that it doesn't matter. You can do all the right things all the time. And if somebody really wants to get to you, they're going to get to you. But the reality is what we're trying to do is limit the scope and limit the target on our back. And that's just the steps that we have to take in building a good security posture.
Yeah, I think spot on there. So on the ransomware front too, let's talk about targeted verticals. You know, in the mid-year threat report, the data is pretty staggering, with the most commonly targeted industry being government, you know, state, not just federal government, but state and local government. So as well as education isn't far behind. Why do you think that continues to be the case and continues to go up?
Yeah, for me, a few reasons there. Again, I believe that it's funding, right? A lot of these schools are going to just be underfunded, so they're not going to have the best security posture in play. It's not everybody. You know, we work with some schools that have a great security posture that's been built out, great security program. But a lot of schools just don't have the funding. They don't have the personnel to do this, to keep up on the latest trends. So it makes them an easy target, right? So what people believe a lot of time through movies and news and things like that, or that hackers are going after all these large businesses and it's taking them months and things like that. And that does happen. However, what they really want is the low-hanging fruit. They don't want to work very hard for it. So I always equate it to like a burglar, right? So they always say that close to 80 to 90% of all burglaries could be stopped if the door was just locked on your house. So a burglar just goes up and wiggles the doorknob or presses on it. And if it opens, they go in. But if it's locked, they just walk away. A lot of times from a hacker mentality, it's the same way. Unless they truly need or want something from that business, very specific. If it's difficult to get in, they're going to walk away. And that's just typically not the case with schools. It's typically pretty easy to get in. And that's why I feel like they continue to attack them.
Yeah, I think budget, and probably in government as well, is just a huge factor. I mean, obviously there's a lot of PII involved, a lot of personal identification information, but the budget piece from a government and education standpoint is always a factor. They have to be as smart with their money as possible and make it go as far as possible. And sometimes, unfortunately, security is where the cuts happen. So I think as long as that continues to be the case, then they will continue to be the highest targeted.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. All right, let's give everyone a break from ransomware and let's talk about IoT attacks. So there was a big spike in IoT attacks in the first half of 21. What does that mean to everybody that might be different than what IoT attacks meant in 2020?
Well, I would like to tell everybody that's going to get better, but I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to get worse. The reason being is work from home is here to stay, right? I mean, I know that you got your nice virtual background up, but I know what's hidden behind that background right now. And thank God you have that background up. But just kidding. But I'm in the office today. You're at home, but the majority of individuals are working from home or someplace else remote. That means more devices that are connected to some network that might be getting back into a corporate network. Also supply chain issue, right? Chip shortages. Well, why is there chip shortages? Because everything has chips these days. They're shipping washers and dryers and refrigerators that are connected. So now you have these devices that were never connected before. They might be on your internal wireless network at home. They could have vulnerabilities that most individuals, unless they work in security, don't even know that they have. If you got a washer and dryer today, that was connected to the internet or Wi-Fi, you're probably not checking news feeds every week or month or year to see if your washer has a vulnerability that you need to patch. You might not even know how to do that.
Right.
So that's kind of scary, right? That we're shipping this equipment out, and there's other things, cameras. I mean, think about how many people have cameras now at their houses, or Ring doorbells, or any, audio video doorbell, for instance. They're all connected to some network that then could have access back into a corporate network now, because so many people are working from home. And I just don't see that slowing down, because we're just so connected now, and we're shipping many more devices that are connected like that. And I think that's just going to be a primary attack surface for a lot of hackers to continue through the next probably 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, I think no surprises there. And I think the key with all of it, and then you mentioned with ransomware as well, is attack surface. It's just the constantly expanding attack surface. And one of the data points in the threat report that really stuck out to me as well is the kind of estimated number of IoT devices projected to be online by 2027 is 41 billion. And when you talk about an attack surface like that, as well as just an ever expanding number of devices that are going to be classified as IoT, I think that data point alone says it's probably here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at my Wi-Fi a couple of days ago. I was making some tweaks to it, and 52 devices in my house connected to wireless, which is just mind-boggling. I had to literally go through all of them, because I did not believe there could be that many. But guess what? There were that many. So, and I would tell you that a lot of people that leverage technology from Amazon, or auto lights, any of that stuff, TVs. I mean, almost every TV is connected to Wi-Fi now. You have Roku's, you have Apple TVs, all of that stuff. It adds up very quickly. Our watches, our cell phones, all of that stuff. The next thing you know, you've got 30, 40, 50 devices that are connected to Wi-Fi. And a lot of times those employees' Wi-Fi, that's what they're using to leverage to get back into corporate environments. So it becomes a big attack surface.
So you mentioned a lot of the types of devices. Is there anything else in there that you can think of that maybe are not commonly thought of IoT devices, or commonly considered in the attack surface?
I think what happens a lot of times is people forget about their modem and their Wi-Fi router itself. A lot of times these are just provided by ISPs, and they don't think anything about upgrading the firmware or anything like that. It's just like a device that sits there and gets them internet access. And what you see a lot of times is the vulnerabilities are in those devices themselves, and they still need to be patched. So it's not like they're not known IoT devices. I just think that those are devices that are always working, so people just forget about them, but they need to be patched. And that's one of the primary attack surfaces for hackers.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's jump to the decline in malware, because I think as it relates to threat reporting of any kind, when there is a decline in any type of attack, it seems like it's a good thing. The first instinct is to react positively, right? But less malware isn't necessarily less cybercrime. Where does your brain go when you see a decline in malware?
It's great. It's always good to get a win, right? I tell people that all the time, like, everybody likes winning, so we'll take it however we can get it. I don't want to get too excited about it. I think a lot of times what happens is, in this world, is people start to have success in a certain area, and that was ransomware. And so people started targeting that more heavily because they were winning more, and it was easier for them to win. It's cyclical. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see malware tick back up next year, or maybe the year after, if you see ransomware go the other way. But I just think that's really probably what it is. We probably did some things to make it more secure, more difficult for people. But also what's happened is you've moved devices outside of a network now, where they're all scattered. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for them to get to from a malware perspective. But really, I think at the end of the day, people were probably having so much success from a ransomware perspective that they forego the malware.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. So let's one other thing, probably the last big thing that jumped out at me is the decline in attacks on non-standard ports, because that's, as it relates to firewalls, probably one of the most common, like one of the most common recommendations is don't forget about your non-standard ports. And so, I mean, do you think there's anything to make about this decline, or is the decline related to, you know, people finally following best practices?
Well, let's do fingers crossed, right? Let's do double fingers crossed here today that it's because people actually did what we've been preaching about for the last 8 or 10 years and started locking down, you know, non-standard ports. That's the hope. I don't know if there's actually any data out there to back that up. That would be an interesting data set to get to see from, let's say, 2 years ago of people who had outbound non-standard ports open compared to people now. That would probably be pretty difficult to get, but would be fun data. Maybe that's the case. I hope it is. It could also be that a lot of stuff just operates over standard ports these days, so people aren't necessarily worried about leveraging non-standard ports. Again, it could be they were having so much success in other areas that they just forgave that for this year. Maybe next year, if we look at the threat report in 2022 and then the mid-year report in 2022, if it continues to trend that way, then what I would say is maybe we're having some success in that area and people are actually starting to really block non-standard ports out of the box, and it's having some good benefits.
Yeah. Well, so you I think brought up the perfect wrap-up topic when we look at the threat report in 2022 and further on, what do we think we'll see based on what we see now? So let's talk predictions. I won't put any wagers on it. I won't hold you to any money paid, or we won't make any bets on whether or not they're right or wrong, but predictions are always fun regardless. So what are your top 3?
Yeah, so if I don't get these right, we'll just make sure we delete this part out of this video in a year. But I don't think that ransomware is going to slow down. I think it's going to continue to trend up, and partially I believe that because of the creation and the ability to easily get ransomware now from like ransomware as a service, right? A lot of times we'll talk about like software as a service or desktop as a service. Well, now there's ransomware as a service. It's becoming a lot more prevalent. Makes it easier for even somebody like me or you, Cara, to easily, you know, pay somebody to ransom a group of individuals if we wanted to, and it's really not that much money to do it. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to go up just because you have the ability to have access to the tools to be able to do that, or even a group of people that know how to do it for you. I continue to believe supply chain is going to be an issue, right? I think that everybody believes that. I know some people are saying it's going to get better maybe in the summer, but with so many factories being shut down, so many IoT devices, the backlog of cars that need it, washers and dryers, refrigerators, Wi-Fi devices, switches, everything needs these chips and processors these days. I think that supply chain is going to continue to be an issue as well. I think deepfakes, this will be the year that you actually start to see people really leverage deepfake attacks for a large organization. And I'm not saying that it's going to happen for everybody or it's going to be super prevalent, but I think that in 2022, you're going to see somebody have success with a deepfake attack against a business. And it's really going to get people to start to pay attention to that and really think differently about how we do security. So those are my 3. I throw out a 4th one there for you. I know over the last couple of years, it's bonus prediction. I know that we've been talking a lot about artificial intelligence, machine learning, and a lot of the great tools that we're using from a defensive perspective. But I think what you're going to see in 2022 is that, unfortunately, the bad guys are going to start leveraging artificial intelligence in their attacks as well, which will make them more sophisticated and probably more successful. So we just need to be paying attention to that too.
So on that topic, what you mentioned, the defense piece of things, is that where the importance of SIM technology and the monitoring side of things becomes that much more important?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Again, there's no light bulb moment here that we've had, or there's no silver bullet. There's so many things we have to do. It used to be about defense, then it was layered defense. Now it's really, we talked a lot about defense plus detection. So we need to be doing a lot of the right things up front from an EDR perspective, MFA on everything, making sure that we have a next generation firewall. We're doing the email security, again, email being the most prevalent attack vector. So make sure you have a good email security product out there, but also assume that somebody is in or is going to get in. So now, no matter what size of business you are, you need to have some type of detection. The ability for alarms to go off, alerts to be sent to you, to have somebody looking at things that are happening on your network or other devices that you have hosted in the cloud, to tell you that maybe somebody's in there doing something that's not right. We need to have that type of detection, because otherwise we're really operating our businesses blind.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. All right. Well, Josh, thank you for all of the words of wisdom and all of the pearls, and we'll hold you to follow up in early 2022. We'll see what the next report produces. So just a few reminders for our viewers and listeners. The SonicWall annual threat report and mid-year threat reports are always available to download. Mid-year is obviously the latest data as it exists today, and I'll go ahead and provide a link in the post video notes. But another great tool that SonicWall makes available both to partners that we leverage heavily as well as end users is their Capture Labs portal. So the Capture Labs portal it's free to use and a centralized repository for really just all of the comprehensive research that SonicWall does. It combines new and previously available tools. So it's just a really, really great resource if you're looking to understand more about the industry. But Josh, thanks again, and thanks to all of our listeners and viewers for joining us again for another installment of Cerdant Bytes.